All right, everybody, let's start the session. In this particular session, we are basically going to look into something called as a blue-green deployment. Okay, and first we'll understand what is a blue-green deployment, and then we will deploy ECS, an application on ECS by using a blue-green deployment. The steps that are involved to create this deployment, first we need to create a application load balancer. On AWS, we have to create application load balancer, and then we need to create a ECS cluster, and then we have to register a task definition, and we need to create a create a service using the task definition, and then we have to create a deployment strategy by using something called as AWS CodeDeploy to deploy the code into the environment. Okay, so these are the steps that we need to follow to achieve this blue-green deployment for ECS. Now, before going further, first of all, let us try and understand what is a blue-green deployment. Now, we can simply call a blue-green deployment as a software release strategy that is basically used to minimize the downtime and minimize the risks that are associated when we are deploying a new version of an application. Now, this blue-green strategy involves maintaining two separate environments. As it is referred, one is a blue environment, okay, and next one is a green environment. So basically there are two environments. If we there should be two environments if we should deploy this a blue green strategy. Now, how many environments will be active? Both blue and green would be active? No, there'll be only one environment which is active, serving the live traffic at any given point of time. Now, this approach allows for seamless switching between the old version, which is blue, and the new version, which is green, ensuring smooth updates and rollbacks. Okay, so the old version is blue, the new version is green. Now, how it works is typically, now the existing version of your application is running on a blue version. Your production application which is running on a blue version. Okay, this serving the live traffic for all the users. Now let's say there is some changes in your application code. So you prepare a new version of your application or a service and deploy that on a separate environment. So now this blue environment is serving your end customers. Now whatever changes that is happening to your application, you deploy that on a green environment, not on a blue environment. So all the new changes is there in a green environment. Now after you do the testing and you verify the application is working fine, etc., if you are completely satisfied that this green version of application is working fine, now you can switch the traffic. Now let's say if you're getting users, to this, the users are requesting or accessing the application from the blue environment. Now you're completely satisfied that your green environment is working fine, then you switch the traffic to your green environment. So now the green environment is working and the blue environment is not working. Okay, that is how you do that is how you implement a blue green deployment. Once you do the deployment, you can monitor during the transaction how is the performance, what is the stability, the behavior of green environment. You can monitor that. Now in case if you feel that it is not working fine, you can immediately roll back to the blue environment. Okay, and we can define how much time this blue environment should be active, up and running, all those things in the configuration. Okay, now why do we need to use this blue green deployment? Basically, It reduces downtime. There is no downtime because both the environments are up and you're just switching the traffic from your old environment to new environment. Now your testing can be in isolation, rollbacks can be very quick, and the transition would be very smooth. That is the reason we use blue green deployment. Now, if you have to use the blue green deployment strategy for ECS, we need to use a service called as code deployment or AWS code deploy. You have to create a deployment and you have to give the strategy as a blue green deployment. Okay. Now let us go ahead and do the hands-on exercise. So for that, first step is that we have to create a load balancer. Now let me switch to my AWS console first. Now I'm on my AWS instance. Let me connect to my management host, which is ECS. It is up and running. Go to connect and select option connect. I'm connecting to this instance. I will create this blue green deployment strategy from this instance. Let me change to root user. Okay, let's see whether I'm connected to AWS or not. AWS S3 LS. Now if you see, I'm able to connect to AWS using this server. Okay, now the first and foremost thing, we have to create a load balancer. Okay, we can create load balancer either by using UI as well as command line. Now if it is command line, so the command would be AWS followed by load balancer ELB version 2, create a load balancer, a name for the load balancer, what is the subnets that you have to use for creating this load balancer, it should be part of which security group and part of which region. This is the syntax to create a load balancer. Let me copy this and paste it here, enter. You see, this has created as a load balancer. And if you see the load balancer ARN, this is the load balancer ARN. We need to, when we are creating a deployment file, we need to mention the ARN of the load balancer. Okay, let me copy this. We will need this in the future. And copy. Let me paste this in my file. Here, let me delete this. This is the ARN which I have copied. Okay, so this is the first step. Now, in an application load balancer, we need to create something called as target groups. Now, initially, I am creating one target group. This target group is called as a blue green target group, target one. Okay, so now to create this target group, again, the syntax would remain like AWS ELB version 2, create a target group. Previously, you have used create a load balancer. Now we are creating a target group. Okay, and we have to mention what is the protocol it should work with, what is the name of the target group, what is the protocol, what is the IP, what is the VPC, and the region. Let me copy this syntax and run it here. Now, if you see, there is no problem. We are able to successfully create a target group. The name of the target group is called as a blue green target. Okay. Now you see, we got a ARN for the target group. Let me copy this ARN as well. Copy. Let me paste it in my file. So we got two ARN numbers, one for the load balancer, one for the target. Okay. Now we have created load balancer. We have created a target group. As the next step, we have to create a listener. So basically, so now we have created a load balancer here. We have created a target here. Now, how should we come to know whatever traffic is coming to the load balancer, the traffic has to come to target group? we basically have to create a listener. So in this listener, I will mention the ARN of the load balancer and ARN of the target. So now whatever traffic that comes to the load balancer, listener, with the help of listener, that will route to the target group. Okay. So now let me change the ARN. So now this is the ARN. Let me copy the ARN of the load balancer first. If you come down here, let me change it. Okay. And then this, let me copy the ARN of the target group, copy, and then change it. Okay. And the region is US East 1. So let's create a listener. Let me copy this. So basically in a listener, we are saying that AWS ELB version 2, create a listener. What is the load balancer? This is the load balancer. At what port? Port 80. What is the target group? This is the target. That is what we have mentioned in this configuration. Let's do a paste, enter. Now if you see, we are successfully able to create a listener. So what we have done till now, we created a load balancer, we created a target group, we created a listener. Now let us take the ARN of the listener. Why do we need ARN of this listener? When we are configuring deployment, this is the ARN that I have to give it there. Copy the ARN of the listener, go here, let me paste it. Okay, this is the ARN of the listener. Okay, now we finish creating a load balancer. As a second step, we need to create a ECS cluster, and we have to create a task definition, and we have to register the task and create a service. These are the four steps on ECS that we need to create. Okay, so we know how to create a ECS cluster. So let me copy the syntax. It is AWS ECS create cluster, cluster name, and we can also add another flag, which is region. Okay, now I'm pasting it here, enter. Now if you see, I'm able to successfully create a ECS cluster. Cluster name is tutorial blue green cluster. Okay, that is the name of the cluster that I have created. Let's go to the next step, and let us take the ARN of this ECS cluster. Okay, let's go here. So this is the ARN. Copy. Okay, this is the ARN cluster. Now we need to register a task definition. Okay, let's say I'll create a directory mkdir new task. Okay, cd new task and vi new task. Now let me show you guys my code definition file. Okay, if you go here, this is a code definition file. So in this, I have the app name, the image name, how the image has to be connected to the port, okay, and what should be there in the container, uh, all these things. Now the execution role here, we know that we have to change our execution role. Okay, let me give my execution role. Let me go to, well, this is my execution role. Let me copy it, come here and paste. Okay, that is the only change that I need to do. Rest all will remain the same. Copy this. Okay, let me give this as a JSON file. Paste. save. Right. Now we created a task definition file. Now we need to register this task definition file. It will be AWS ECS register. Uh, I think it is definition register hyphen task definition. Okay, and the file name is this. Let me copy this. Not required. Register hyphen task hyphen definition. Okay, and we need to give the path of the file. Okay, hyphen CLI hyphen input hyphen, the input file is JSON, right? We need to mention JSON and the file name. File path, my file name is new task.json. Okay, so this will register a task. Okay, we are successfully able to register the task. You see, this is the task definition here. New tutorial task def 8. Let me copy this. Okay, now we need to create a service. We registered the task definition and now we need to create a service. In the previous examples, we have created a service by using syntax AWS, ECS, create service, hyphen, hyphen, the cluster name and the service name, right? But this time, let us create a service by using a JSON file. Now, let me show you the configuration of the JSON file for creating a service. Now, if you see, I have blue-green service JSON. So in this, we are basically mentioning the cluster that we have created. The cluster name is called as tutorial blue-green cluster. Okay, and the service name is service blue-green. And the task definition is the tutorial task def. That is what we have created till now, and we are mentioning it here. Okay, and the load balancer, you see the target group ARN. Let me change the target group ARN here. What is my target group ARN? I have made a note here. Okay, this is my target group ARN. Let me copy this and paste it here. Okay, that is done. And what is, how do we have to deploy this? I want to deploy this by using something called as code deploy. That is my deployment controller. Okay, and launch type is forget. That means it is serverless. And you see public, I assign public IP enabled. If you guys remember in the previous exercise, we have given as public assign public IP is equal to enabled. Same thing we are mentioning here. Okay, and we also have mentioned the security group as well as the subnets. So let me give the same security group and subnets here. So this is my security group. Let me copy it, paste, and subnet. Let me remove this both subnets. One subnet. Let me copy this and the second subnet. Okay. Now that is all the changes. Now copy this file. Let me go back to my console. Okay, now let me create one more JSON file here. Let's say this as service.json. Okay, enter. I Let me copy this, paste. Okay. Now this service is created. Now let me run this JSON file. Okay, this is the syntax to run the file. Let me copy this, paste. Let me change the name of the file. Name of the file is service.json. Rest all will remain the same. So basically it is AWS ECS create service. The input is from CLI and this is the file name. Okay. Enter. If you see, the service is created successfully. Now let us just recap what we have done till now and then we'll take it forward. We created a load balancer. To the load balancer, we created a target group and listener. After that, we created a ECS cluster. Okay. In the ECS cluster, we created a task definition. With the help of task definition, we created a service and we attach that service to this target group. Okay. Now, once we created this load balancer, it will get one public DNS name. All right. Now, if I take the DNS name of this load balancer and put that on the browser, I should be able to see whatever is there in this particular container or service. Now, let us see that. Let me go to my AWS console here. Let's go to load balancer. Here we'll have load balancers. So you should be able to see a load balancer here. Now you see this is the load balancer that we have created. And if you see the DNS name of the load balancer, it is Bluegreen ALB. Let me copy this and put that in a browser and enter. Now you see there's a blue environment that has come up. Okay. Now what will we do? We will make changes to this code and we should be able to access the code from the green environment. Okay. Let us go ahead and do that. So that means we are dealing with two environments now. So to deal with multiple environments, there's a deployment strategy. Okay. And how to work with this deployment strategy? By using something called as code deploy on AWS. Okay. Now for that, we need to create a deployment code deploy. We have to create a code deploy resource. Now how we need to create a code deploy resource? It is very easy. AWS deploy create application. So whatever we create on deployment, it is nothing but an application. Okay. And the application name, I'm giving it as tutorial Bluegreen app. And what is the compute platform? It is ECS. Now you can also choose if you're creating EC2, if you're using this code build for EC2, the compute platform should be EC2. If it is Lambda, the compute platform should be Lambda. But for us, we are using this deployment strategy for a compute platform called as EC2, ECS. So we have choose ECS. Now let me copy this syntax, go to my server and run this. Enter. Okay. Now the deployment is created. Code deploy application is created. And now we have created one target group for load balancer where it is allowing some traffic, right? Now I want to create another target group for the same load balancer. So we know that syntax AWS ELB create a target group. Now the previously I have given the target group name as blue green target 1. Here we are giving it as blue green target 2. Okay, and let me copy this code. So basically we are creating another target group. Let me go here. Let me run this and enter. You see the target group is created. So let me copy this ARN. We'll be needing this ARN. Let me copy this and let's go here. Let me copy my ARN here. This is the ARN. Now, now for code deploy, right, we have to create something called as a deployment group. Okay. Again, this deployment group is a JSON. Now, what is deployment group? All the configuration regarding the deployment we will mention in this particular file. Let me show you that file and explain it. Now, let's say this is my code deployment file. It is asking the application name. What is the application? Okay. And then you see here, there's a parameter called as auto rollback configuration. It is enabled. That means you have to do a rollback when in the event a deployment is failure. Okay. That is what the meaning of this first block is. Now the second block, to update the configuration, do we have to wait how much time? There is no need of any waiting. If there's a new changes that is coming in, the new version of app that is coming in, you can immediately start updating to the deployment. That is continue deployment. There is no need to wait anytime. Once the application is getting accessed from the new environment, that is green environment, when you have to remove the old environment, you wait for 5 minutes and then delete the old environment. That is the terminate blue instances on deployment success. What is the action? You have to terminate. How much time you have to wait? You have to wait for 5 minutes and terminate this instances. Okay. Now these are the actions that it has to take. These are the parameters that we are mentioning. And what is the name of the deployment group? The deployment group is tutorial blue green deployment group. Okay. Now what is the deployment type? Here we are mentioning, you see, the deployment type is a blue green deployment. Okay. And you see, we created a load balancer, right? We are also mentioning the load balancer information here. We have created two target groups. One is blue green target group 1, second one is blue green target group 2. Okay. And you see here, now there is a listener ARN here. We need to mention the listener ARN here. Let me change the listener ARN. Delete. Let me go ahead and copy the listener ARN. So this is my listener ARN here. Let me copy it. It is in my file. Okay. I'm giving that ARN and the service role. Now we have to create a service role uh, for the code deploy to work with ECS. Okay. I have created one service role. I will show that to you. If you come here in the ECS, I have lot of roles. Let me go here and type in for ECS. I can see there is something called as ECS code deploy role for ECS. Okay. Now you see what permissions are there in this ECS code deploy. Now it has S3, IAM, CloudWatch, okay, ECS, SNS. You see there is ELB access. It has read-write access for the ELB and then Lambda access. These are the different permissions that are there for this particular role. Let me copy this role and okay, now let me go these roles again. This is the role. Let me copy this ARN of the role. Okay. Now let me go here and then replace this role. Okay. And then service name, cluster name. This is my service name. This is my cluster name. Let me copy this. Let me go to my server and create a file vi blue green hyphen deploy.json. Enter I and paste. Okay. Now let us run this deployment. To run this deployment, we can use this syntax. Okay, you see this one, AWS deploy create deployment group. Let me copy this, paste. Let me change the name of the file. My file name is bg hyphen deploy. Okay, and enter. See, the deployment group is created. Let me copy this deployment ID. Copy. Let's say this is my deployment ID. All right. Now create and monitor the code deploy deployment. Now to make sure or to understand that the traffic is changing from blue to green and green to blue, let us do a update in our task definition file that we have created. Let me go here. Let me see for the task definition file. I think this is my task definition file. Enter. Okay. Now if I see the color, it is coming as blue, right? Let me change the color to green. Okay, how to change that color to green? Let's say here, you see there is something called as background color. Let me give the uh, code for the green color. It will be 097969. Okay, so I made some changes to the code. Exit. So basically I have made some changes to the task which is there. Okay, now we have made the changes to the file. Let us go ahead and implement that changes to the task definition file. Now the syntax would be AWS ECS register task definition input, and this is the file name. Okay, let me update that file. Okay, now if you see this 097969, it got updated. That means we have made changes to the code. Okay, now after that, to create and monitor this deployment, right, we need to create a app spec file. Okay, we have to create an app spec YAML file. In this we need to mention what is the target service, what are the properties, what is the task definition, what is the load balancer, so that we can monitor it. Okay, let me go ahead and create this app spec YAML file. Now to create this app spec file, right, it is advised this app spec file should be there in a S3. Okay, so now if this app spec file has to be there in S3, I will create this file locally and then copy this file to S3. So for that, first of all, let me create one AWS S3 bucket. So to create AWS S3 bucket, syntax would be AWS S3, MB stands for make bucket, S3, and we have to give the name for the bucket. I'll give the name as tutorial blue green hyphen bucket. Enter. Now you see a bucket is created by this particular name. Now let me create this app.spec file. Okay, let's say vi app spec dot, this would be a YAML file. Okay, YAML I. Now let me show you how the spec file will look like. Let me go to my Visual Studio. Okay, this is a YAML file. So version 0.0 resources. Under resources, there are list of resources. One of the resources is target service. The target service type is AWS ECS service. And the properties, we have to define the task definition which we want to monitor. And the load balancer information, this is the simple app, at what port, and the platform version. Now here we have to change our task definition with our latest task. Okay, let me copy this and let me paste it here. Enter. Okay, let me go ahead and see what is the task definition. Okay, this is the ARN of the task definition which we have created now. Let me copy this now. Go to spec file again. I, and then let's change this. Paste. Okay, escape. Okay, this file is saved. Now let me run this. Oh, now we need to copy this to AWS S3, right? Now what is the AWS S3 bucket? If you want to see AWS S3 LS, this is the name of the bucket. The name of the bucket which we created now is basically this one, TUT blue green bucket. Now I want to copy, right? If I want to copy to AWS S3, uh, starts with AWS S3 CP stands for copy. What we need to copy? I need to copy a file called as app spec.yaml. Where I need to copy? I need to copy this to my S3 bucket. What is my S3 bucket name? S3 colon colon TUT hyphen blue green hyphen bucket. Okay, this is my bucket name, and app, the file name should be app spec.yaml. It should store there. Okay, and now you see upload of this file to this is successful. Now we need to create a code deploy deployment. This is where we come and create a deployment. Again, for this code deployment, we have to use a JSON file. This is very simple. All that we need to give is the application name, deployment group name that we have created, and mention where is the revision type, which is there at S3, and what is the bucket. Our bucket name is TUT, and what is the key? What is that file name? It is appspec.yaml file. The bundle type is YAML. Okay, this is how the file will look like. Let me copy this and let me go to my server. Okay, here let me create a file for deployment. Vi deploy 3.json. Enter. Let me copy my code. Okay, and let me run this JSON file. AWS deploy. So this is basically we are working with code deploy. Create hyphen deployment hyphen CLI hyphen input hyphen JSON and file path or file name is deploy3.json. Okay, I hope everything is correct here, and let me run this. You see that deployment is created and we got a deployment ID. Now we got the deployment ID. Let us see the status of the deployment. To see the status of the deployment, we can use AWS deploy get deployment hyphen target hyphen deployment ID and this is the deployment ID. Let me copy it, paste, and hyphen target ID. I think I have this command. Let me copy that. Okay, this is a complete command to see the status of the deployment. All I need to change is the deployment number here. You can see D61 IHIG31. All right, let me enter. An error occurred while calling the deployment ID, not part of the deployment. I've given the name of the service is wrong. It is only service Bluegreen. Let me remove this. Enter. Now if we say before install it is succeeded, install it is succeeded, after install it is succeeded, succeeded, everything is succeeded here. Okay, task set table is green. Let me go here now. You see now it has changed to the green. That means we are getting this from a green environment now. Okay, now after some time, once the code gets updated to the from the blue environment, the code has shifted to the green environment. After some time, the blue environment will be deleted. Now let us go to AWS code deploy and see that. Okay, let's say because we created code deploy, if we come here, you see there's a deployment by name, Bluegreen deployment is created. Let's go here into the deployments here. Okay, now if we see, we got a deployment status, deployment ID here. Now let me click on the deployment ID, and now you see the replacement is 100%. Now the original task set not serving the traffic. Whatever is the replacement task is setting the serving the current traffic. Okay, that means blue green deployment. If we consider original as blue, now it is not serving any traffic. The traffic is served by green. Okay, now if you remember, we have given the time period of 5 minutes for this environment to be deleted. Now it is saying wait time is 5 minutes. Okay, once the wait time 5 minutes is finished, it will delete this particular environment and it will delete that particular task. Okay, that is how we can configure deploy applications via blue green deployment method by using AWS CodeDeploy and ECS. Let me show you what are the steps that we have done. Let me go here. Now let's see the complete architecture that we have deployed now. First step, we created a load balancer. Okay, and we created two things here. One is called as target group, second one is called as listener. All right, and then we created a ECS cluster. ECS cluster. We created a task definition and then we created a service. So when we are creating a service, we added this target group to the service. So whenever users are pinging the load balancer, we are able to see this container. Okay. So till this, creation of environment is done. But now what? We want to deploy this blue-green environment. Okay. Now how can we do that? To deploy this blue-green environment, we have to create something called as code deploy. Okay. We created a code deploy. And after creating a code deploy, we created another target group. Okay. We created another target group. Now, because there are two target groups, we created something called as a deployment group. And we added both the target groups to the deployment groups. Now we have code deploy, we have deployment group. So when we creating this code deploy, right, we created an application. We gave a name to the application which has to fall under blue green deployment. So we have code deploy application, we have deployment group. And what we want to do once we created all this, we want to monitor this application. To monitor this application, we created a spec file and this spec file should be there on AWS S3. Okay. So now basically we have application, we have deployment group and we have a file how to monitor this application. Using these three, deployment group, in the deployment group we have target group. Using deployment group and the application name and the spec file, we created a code deployment using to monitor code deploy. We have created one deployment using this app S3 and the DG. Now after that, the application started implementing blue green deployment that we saw. All right, this is what we have implemented. Now let me go ahead and see that console here. Now if you see the code deployment, you see the wait time 5 minutes is finished and this has deleted the old environment. Now all the traffic will be from the new environment. Now again, if we update this code, this old one will be replaced by, this will become, the replacement will become the old and a new one will come here. Okay. That is how we can deploy blue green deployment strategy by using AWS ECS. Thank you for joining the session. You guys have a good time. Take care.